My mother picked up the glass jar, looked at the cloudy mixture bubbling inside it, and dropped it straight into the trash. Bread is a commodity, she said flatly. Anyone can make it. The jar shattered against the metal bin and with it, the only thing in the world I cared about when I was 17. What she didn't realize was that the living culture she had just thrown away was the foundation of the bakery empire she would try to claim 49% of 15 years later. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 32 years old, and until 9 seconds ago, I was sitting in a courtroom, listening to my own mother explain to a judge why she deserved nearly half of the company I spent half my life building. She said she had inspired my passion. She said she had supported my dream. And she said that without her, none of it would exist. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't even look angry. I just sat there, fingers folded on the wooden table, listening to her rewrite the story of my life. The judge leaned forward slightly. My lawyer quietly slid a thick folder closer to my elbow, and my mother smiled at the gallery like she had already won. But there was one small problem. She had forgotten the one sentence she said to me the night I left home. The sentence that turned my obsession into something unstoppable. Bread is a commodity. Anyone can make it. Let me ask you something before I tell you the rest. Have you ever had someone you trusted completely dismiss something you love? Not criticize it, not question it, but treat it like it was completely worthless, like it meant nothing? If that's ever happened to you, tell me in the comments, because sometimes the people who underestimate us the most are the same ones who try to claim our success later. And my mother, she underestimated me more than anyone on earth. I grew up in a small town where everyone believed success meant 3 things: a stable job, a respectable house, and never doing anything strange. My mother believed that more than anyone. Her name was Linda Mercer, and she was the kind of person who believed life worked best when nobody tried anything unusual. Predictable, safe, respectable. My older brother Jason was her favorite example of that philosophy. He played football, studied business, and planned to take over my uncle's insurance agency. My mother adored him. She bragged about him at church, at family dinners, even to strangers in grocery store lines. Jason was her proof that the Mercer family raised normal kids. And then there was me, the weird one, the quiet one, the kid who spent entire weekends in the kitchen experimenting with flour and water. I was 14 when I first discovered Sourdough. It started with a library book, an old baking guide that talked about wild yeast cultures, living starters that could survive for decades, centuries even. The idea fascinated me. Bread that was alive, bread that had personality, bread that changed depending on the environment it grew in. So I started experimenting. Flour, water, patience. My first starter smelled terrible. My second one died after for days. But the third bubbled to life like something magical. Tiny gas pockets forming slowly, the scent of fermentation rising from the jar. That jar became my obsession. Every day after school, I fed it. Flour, water, time. And every weekend I baked. Crusty loaves. Dense failures. Burnt disasters. But slowly, they improved. And something happened inside me. Something that scared my mother. Because I stopped talking about normal careers. I started talking about bakeries, about fermentation, about the science of flavor. About opening a shop one day. And every time I mentioned it, my mother sighed like I had just announced I planned to join a circus. Baking is a hobby, she'd say, not a future. Jason would laugh. You're going to spend your life making toast. Even at family dinners, it became a joke. What's Daniel doing today? Probably talking to his bread again. Everyone laughed. Except me. But the night everything changed happened when I was 17. It was late. The kitchen smelled like warm crust and toasted grain. I had just pulled a loaf from the oven. Perfect ear. Deep caramel crust. Open crumb. The best bread I had ever made. I was staring at it like it was a trophy when my mother walked in. She looked at the flour on the counter, the jars, the scale, and the starter, that glass jar I had been feeding for 2 years. "Daniel," she said, "this is getting ridiculous." "It's not ridiculous," I said quietly. "It's practice." "For what?" "My bakery." She stared at me like I had said something embarrassing. "You're not opening a bakery." "Yes, I am." She picked up the jar. The starter bubbled quietly inside. "That thing, it's the base of everything." She sighed. "Daniel, bread is a commodity." And before I could react, she dropped it into the trash. The jar shattered. The smell of fermentation spread through the kitchen. Anyone can make it. The words hit harder than the glass breaking. Something inside me went completely still. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at the trash can. Then I walked upstairs, packed a backpack, and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked down the driveway at 17 years old with $200 and nowhere to go. And that should have been the end of the story, except it wasn't. Because humiliation can do something powerful to a person. It can break them, or it can turn into fuel. And for me, it became obsession. The first year was brutal. I slept on friends' couches, worked dishwashing jobs, saved every dollar. But the most important thing I did was walk into a tiny artisan bakery downtown and ask for a job. The owner looked at my resume, then at me. "You have no experience." "I'll work for minimum wage." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine. Dishwasher." But I didn't stay a dishwasher long, because every spare second I watched the bakers, how they shaped dough, how they controlled fermentation. How temperature changed flavor. Within 6 months, I was helping mix dough. Within 2 years, I was the night baker. And my obsession only grew. I studied everything. French techniques, ancient grain fermentation, hydration ratios, starter cultures. I built my own starter again from scratch. This time I named it Phoenix because it had risen from ashes. And over the next 10 years, something incredible happened. I didn't just bake bread. I perfected it. I started selling loaves at farmers' markets, then opened a tiny storefront. Then a second location, then a third. By the time I turned 30, Mercer artisan bread had become something I never imagined. 5 bakeries. National Food Magazine features, wholesale contracts with upscale restaurants, and annual revenue just under $12 million. But my family didn't know any of that, because after I left home, I never went back. To them, I was just the kid who ran away, the failure who chose baking over a real career. Which brings us back to the courtroom, 15 years later, where my mother was explaining to a judge why she deserved 49% of my company. Her argument was simple. She claimed the idea started in her kitchen. She claimed she encouraged my baking. She claimed she had supported my entrepreneurial spirit. And because the brand used my last name, she believed she had ownership rights. The courtroom was quiet when she finished speaking. She looked confident. Almost proud. My lawyer leaned toward me slightly. "Ready?" he whispered. I nodded. Then I stood up. The judge looked at me. Double quotes, "Mr. Mercer, you may respond." I walked to the center of the room. Calm. Quiet. My mother watched me like she expected gratitude. Instead, I opened the folder on the table. Inside were photographs. Receipts. Letters. And one specific piece of evidence. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to start with something small." I held up a printed photo. A broken glass jar in a trash can. Flour dust on the counter. My mother's kitchen. This was taken 15 years ago. My mother frowned. "I don't see the relevance." I looked at her. "Do you remember this night?" Silence. "You told me something that changed my life." I turned back to the judge. She said bread was a commodity. A few people in the gallery shifted. Then she destroyed the sourdough culture I had been growing for 2 years. My mother's expression tightened. "That's not." I raised my hand gently. I'm not finished. I placed a ledger on the table. Over the next 15 years, I built a bakery company. I slid a financial report toward the judge. Annual revenue last year, $11.8 million. Murmurs filled the courtroom. My mother blinked. Confused. I continued. We operate 5 locations, supply 32 restaurants, and ship nationally. The room grew quiet. My mother's lawyer leaned forward suddenly. That information wasn't disclosed in discovery. My attorney smiled slightly. That's because you assumed the business was small. I turned back to my mother. You didn't inspire this company. You created it. Her eyes widened slightly. By destroying the thing I loved and proving I had to build it myself. Silence fell over the courtroom. Then the judge spoke. Mrs. Mercer, your claim of ownership appears unsupported. My mother's confidence cracked for the first time. But I raised him? Yes, the judge said. But the evidence suggests you also dismissed and discouraged the venture entirely. He closed the file. Your claim for 49% ownership is denied. The gavel came down softly. Case dismissed. My mother looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Daniel, she whispered. I paused at the door. Then turned back. You were right about one thing. She looked hopeful. Bread is a commodity. I held the door open. But passion isn't. Then I walked out. Into sunlight. Into freedom. Into the life I built without anyone's permission. And that's the strange truth about success. Sometimes the people who try to crush your dreams end up creating the fire that makes them real. So if someone has ever told you your passion was worthless, remember this story. Because the best revenge in the world is proving them wrong.